Hello, my name is Nicole Till, and I am a K-5 behavior disabilities teacher at a local elementary school. I graduated from Ashford University with my teaching degree, and my endorsements were in reading and special education. I currently am finishing up my master's at Morningside. The following study is on an intervention called repeated readings. It is for the effects of repeated readings on reading fluency with a group of third grade students. The problem here is that reading fluency is a skill that is of high focus in today's schools. All students are working at building their reading fluency. However, many students struggle and are in need of some extra interventions or ways to help them build their fluency. We as teachers have the responsibility to find new ways for these students to reach their full potential. I chose this topic because as an elementary teacher, we put a lot of focus on reading fluency, and many of the students that I work with currently have reading IEP goals or just struggle with reading fluency and need some extra interventions. The use of repeating readings was an intervention that was suggested by our instructional coach. Therefore, I decided to look more into it, find more information out, and use it as my research topic. As stated, reading fluency is a topic that's a big focus with the elementary education. There's a lot of research out there on reading fluency and the different strategies that we can use to help struggling readers become better readers. So what is reading fluency? According to the Reading Rocket website, there's 3 parts to reading fluency. The first one is accuracy. If a student is reading accurate, they're able to read words correctly with very few errors. They're able to automatically recall words, and they do not need to sound out the words to read them. These are often called sight words. The second part is speed, which if a fluent reader is going to read a little faster than a slower reader. If you're fluent, your speed is going to be pretty steady. If you're not fluent, you might be choppy, so you might kind of sound like you aren't quite sure what is going on. The third part of reading fluency is expression. They're stopping at the punctuation, they're showing that they understand the punctuation and how to show expression when they read. So why does reading fluency matter? Reading fluency is not something that only helps students with reading faster in their everyday world, but it also helps with other topics. A study that was done by Rutherford, Becker, and Vanderwood in 2009 found a correlation between fluency and comprehension. They used Maze comprehension probes and were able to see that those students that were building their fluency were actually building their comprehension as well. They also found a correlation between fluency and math. As I stated, there's lots of research out there on different interventions that might help students become better fluent readers. In 2014, Blau did a research project and studied 3 different types of interventions. They studied modeling fluent reading, repeated reading, reading while listening, and then in 2010, Kostowicz and Kubina, they studied repeated readings and interval sprinting. In 2008, Theron and Hughes studied paired reading, repeated reading, and reading while listening. In their study, they found that repeated reading was the most beneficial. So what is repeated reading? Repeated reading is rereading a short passage multiple times. The student is going to read the same passage the whole week long. Then they'll start a new passage the following week. On the first day, they're going to do a cold read, where they read it and they've never read this story before. The rest of the time, they're going to read the same passage, practicing to see how many words they can get correct per minute. The purpose of repeated reading is to help build fluency. One group of researchers who focused on repeated readings was Ardorn, Morena, Binder, and Foster. They focused on the impact of just focusing on rate for corrections versus focusing on encouraging the students to use expression. They found that students were only focused on the rate actually had a higher increase in words correct per minute than those who were focused on expression. Another group of researchers, Swain, Leader, Jansen, and Conley, focused on repeated readings, listening passage preview, and audio listening passage preview. they found that initially the repeated readings was not as beneficial as the others. However, in the long run, repeated readings ended up being more beneficial for the others. In the long run, repeated readings showed more growth. Another research study done by Ates in 2013 focused on repeated reading with performance-based feedback. They worked with a 10-year-old Turkey student, and the process was to have the student read a story a first time, then the teacher would give feedback on how they did, and the student would practice the words that they missed, and the student was allowed to read the story again. The findings from the research showed great increase in the amount of words read correct per minute, and a decrease in the amount of miscues or wrongly read words right away. The National Reading Panel also focused on a repeated reading, and they saw that it had a positive impact in their study. However, the U.S. Department of Education did a study, and they found that repeated reading was not effective. This shows that we needed more research done on repeated readings, because some people found it to be effective and some people found it to not be effective. With the controversial studies, the goal of this research is to decide, is repeated reading effective? Can it really help my students build their reading fluency and help them in other areas as well? My hypothesis is that repeated readings will help the students show their growth. The students in this study came from a town of about 26,000 people. There are 4 elementary school buildings in our district. In our building, there are 500 students, there are 72 staff members, and 3 sections of 3rd grade. There's 1 special education teacher for each grade level, as well as 1 BD teacher, 1 level 2 teacher, and 1 level 3 teacher in our building. There were 13 students in this study. They were all 3rd grade students. They also all were struggling readers. There were 3 boys and 10 girls. That was not planned, it just worked out that way, so it wasn't very even. We did have 4 reading IEP students in this group. There was 1 student who was a speech-only IEP, another student who was a math-only IEP, and then 7 students who were non-IEP students. Of those 7 students, 4 of them were Title I students, meaning that they got some extra help from a reading teacher. So on the first day, or even before the intervention was given, they were all given a pre-intervention CBM for FAST. Every student in our building was given a FAST assessment. We took those students, and I took the students that really needed an intervention that were they were accurate but slow. So repeated reading was a strategy used for those that were accurate but slow. On day 1, they would do a cold read for this passage. So they would read a new passage to me for 1 minute. Then they would graph the words correct per minute, and we'd talk about the words that they got incorrect. On days 2 through 4, they then again would read that same passage for 1 minute. And again, they would graph that to show their growth throughout the week on that same passage. Many of the students were very excited to see their growth. On day 5, then, we would meet one-on-one, and we would progress monitor them using their FAST fluency data. So this is done on the computer, FAST is done on the computer, and we would just do a 1-minute reading probe where they read to us for 1 minute, clicking on the words that they missed, and then that told us the total words per minute correct. After 10 weeks, all of the students in our building, again, were given a CBM for FAST to show their growth throughout the 10 weeks or throughout that semester. The results of this study showed that almost all of the students showed significant growth. I did have 1 student who did not show growth, and actually that student went backwards, and I'll show you that information with our charts. For this research, a t-test was completed. In the first table, you will see that the mean score of the winter passage was 97.31 words. In the spring score, after 10 weeks, the score was 117 words, 117.92 words correct per minute. That is a total of 20 words, an average of 20 words correct per minute growth. That means that there was an average of 2 words correct per week of growth. The second table here shows that the difference between the pre-intervention data and the post-intervention data as a group. The p-value was at less than a 0.001, meaning that there was a significant difference in words read correct in the pre-intervention and post-intervention data. This also means that there's very small probability that this would have happened by chance, and if this research was to be done again, it would most likely show the same growth. A Cohen's d score was calculated, and it was a negative 1.907. This means that the intervention was very beneficial, and it had a large effect size. The bar graph here shows each of the individual students' scores, and their pre-assessment is the blue, their post-assessment is the orange. You'll see that most of the students showed significant growth. There was many students who grew over 20 words correct per minute. You'll see student 7 grew almost a total of 40 words correct per minute, which is awesome. However, if you look at student 10, you'll see that that student actually had a small decrease in their words correct per minute. Looking at this data would mean that this student was not effective with this intervention, that we need to look at a different intervention to help this student because it was not able to help them build their fluency. So the data from this research shows that the use of repeating readings is very beneficial. This is an intervention that should be used with struggling readers. The exception would be those students that you find that it doesn't work for them. For the example, my student number 10, it was not beneficial for that student, and so therefore I would not use this intervention with that student again. I would go and find a different intervention to use with that student. The use of repeated readings in this research was able to show an average growth of 2 words correct per week. This shows that it is very beneficial and that can help students with their fluency. One thing to think about would be, could this intervention be effective or beneficial to try in other academic areas? Could we use this with math or writing? Is there a way to use the repeated intervention with other content areas, such as maybe with math facts, or with spelling, or with vocabulary, practicing vocabulary words? This may be something that would be worth looking into. It was very beneficial in the area of reading, so maybe it's going to work for the other areas as well. The intervention of repeated readings should be used more often with students who are struggling with reading fluency. The fact that it showed so much growth tells us that it's very beneficial. All students that were used for this research were struggling readers. Knowing that, one thing to ask is, could this have been successful with readers that are stronger readers? Could we see more growth, or would we see less growth with readers that aren't struggling, that really are doing well, but maybe still want an extra boost and we want to get them caught up or get them ahead even more? Another question would be the age. Would this work with older students, or would this work with younger students? The group of students that I used were in 3rd grade. I'm kind of curious to find out if it could work with students that are in middle school, high school, and students that are maybe 2nd, 1st grade. I wonder if it would be as beneficial, or would the results show us the opposite? Another thing to look at is the time. It only lasted 10 weeks. Thinking about whether this intervention could have continued showing growth after the 10 weeks, or would we have seen a plateau? Would it have stopped showing growth? These are all things that are very interesting to look into and may lead to future research for this topic. It would be recommended to continue this intervention with the students who were in the study and were showing growth. I'd also suggest to try it with older students and stronger readers, and stop with the student that it was not beneficial for. The following are my references that were used for my paper. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.